example is dividing the world into the good and the bad. And this is one of the most typical stereotypes that people have, dividing the world just into two. When we think about the good part that humans think about, the good part, but when we think about the good part, the emotion that first comes into our mind is love, affection, and generosity. Because these emotions are associated and connected to the good part, people believe that we can express, or we should express those emotions outward. However, let's look at the other side, the dark side, or the bad side. When people think about the bad thing, the first emotion that comes into our mind is anger, hatred, or loath. And I would like to talk more about the power or the emotion of anger. So because people usually tend to link the feeling of anger with the concept of negativity, they believe that we should not express those emotions. We should not express anger outside, or we should not express anger to other people. That is what most people believe. And today, I would like to break this stereotype. I would like to say that in fact, anger can be powered when we express anger in a more outwardly way, guided with reason. So it means that anger can be a very powerful source for us humans if it is used properly. And I believe that anger gives us the ability to create a result that has not existed in our society, or a result that can change our reality as a whole. So before we talk about the actual power of anger, I would first like to talk about where does anger come from. I believe that anger is an emotion that arouses in people's heart when we confront injustice and when our personal boundary and rights are violated. Anger is an emotion that arouses when we realize that we are confronting something that is unjust, and when we realize that our rights and our boundaries are being violated. So I believe that this realization is very important when we discuss about the emotion of anger. So basically, I believe that anger is a power that allows us to protect ourselves, to protect us from the harms or some unjust situations that can happen in our daily lives. So these injustices include gender inequality, or sexism, or racism, or even school bullying as well. So from these injustices and from these violations, the emotion of anger arouses in our heart or in our mind. I can say that because anger is an emotion that arouses in a situation when our rights are violated, people tend to change those situations. People want to make a situation that is better for them, want to create a world that everyone can live in more happily. So I believe that anger motivates significant changes throughout history as well. It means that it can motivate people to do some action that allows us to change our reality and our history as a whole. So the first example that I thought about was women's suffrage. So in the 1820s to the 1830s, most U.S. states extended the suffrage or the franchise to all white men, regardless of their wealth. So during that time, the atmosphere of the whole society was talking about what is right and what is the right to vote. So everyone was interested in this topic. However, although whether the U.S. government should give the right for black men as well, there was no conversation whether they should give those rights to women as a whole. So many reform groups existed, and these groups include many women groups as well. So women groups at this time questioned what it meant to be a woman in the U.S. society and what it meant to be a citizen in the U.S. Because during this time, citizen referred only to a white man who were able to vote. So they started to deny the cult of true womanhood. And this cult of true womanhood in this time refers to the society where women should be pious, they should be religious, and they should be submissive to their husband. So women, after realizing how unjust situation that they were in, were angered by this situation. And also, the Declaration of Independence fueled the women's action as well. So the Declaration of Independence says that men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. However, the the reality was different. Although the Declaration of Independence said that men and women are created equal, the situation was not. So the women who were angered by this situation created the Seneca Falls Convention. So in this convention, women stated that women were autonomous individuals who deserved the same political rights as men as well. And I believe that this case shows that women expressed anger through the means of political campaigns and organizations, which eventually led to the result of the Constitution being ratified finally after 100 years of continuous movement. And women were then finally able to participate in elections as well. If women just turned off their anger inside their hearts and did not participate in those campaigns, and if they were not interested in expressing their angers outward of their heart, then maybe until this day now, women might not have the suffrage as well. So I believe that this is the power that anger has. It motivates people to change something. It motivates people to go out of their current status and to pursue something that brings more benefit and brings more happiness to them. The second example that I believe that anger could change our situation was the impeachment of the former President Park Geun-hye. So President Park Geun-hye was accused of temporary suspension of presidential power to another person. When people felt that their political rights were ignored and that their rights were violated because they voted for a president. However, that president did not kept the responsibility that they should have. So unlike a former dictatorship where people were not able to express anger or where people were not allowed to express their freedom, nowadays people express their anger publicly. So the most famous example is the candlelight protest. So the mad teenagers and mad people went out to the streets and they did the protest in a very peaceful way. So I believe that this is a good example where anger can change our situation. And eventually, President Park Geun-hye was impeached in 2017. And I believe that this is also the power that anger has. And this is a picture of the candlelight protest. And the last example that I would like to talk about is the Me Too movement. So this was a movement against sexual harassment and assault through SNS using hashtag #MeToo. So this was started by one celebrity, one woman, who thought that she was being sexually harassed and assaulted by her boss. So this deals with the injustice that happens at workplace. For example, especially in workplaces that involve movies, fashion, and music industries. And people or victims were angered by the prevalence of sexual harassment within the reality, within their real lives. So people might have turned off the anger by themselves. However, they did not. They gained courage, they borrowed the power of SMS, and they were able to stand up to the power relationship that they would not have if it was not for the power. And they were able to voice their words and rights as well. And I believe that if anger is expressed in a very peaceful or in a very powerful way, anger can also be a really powerful emotion to us humans as well. Thank you.
So I'm writing a lot of feedback for all of you, and all of your feedback is like based on the criteria, based on what I've told you a good presentation should have, and that's kind of what your presentations are being measured against. But I know that a lot of you will never look at it. Because actually I have a way of knowing who's looked at it and who hasn't. And I've had classes where everyone's looked at it, and I've had classes where nobody's looked at it. It just depends on the kind of ethos of the class. I think in this class some people are going to look at it, so please do. But also the feedback comes in the questions. When I ask you a question that's critical, that's feedback for you to think about how you can improve your criticality later. So the next time you do a presentation, you don't make the same kind of mistake. And some of the questions are going to be on video, so that's for your benefit. So, unfortunately, there's no redos. In a real situation, they just have, you have to do what you do.
Because I want to talk about the results to wrap up this presentation.
Okay. It's a bit odd, but okay.
So basically, these are the Me Too hashtags that has been presented on Twitter. I think this is a very important part. And the first part is that we should acknowledge that we are being in an unjust situation. That we should tell ourselves that we are angry, and that it is okay to feel angry, and that anger is just a very natural emotion that everyone has. And the second step is to understand. We have to understand why we got angry. So what is the specific reason that made you feel insulted or made you feel angry? So for the case of women's suffrage, the women were angry because they felt that their political rights were violated. And the case of Me Too was because women felt that they were violated of their human and sexual rights. And the last thing is, or the most important thing, is action. We have to call it into action. We don't have to fight back with aggression or violence. But however, I believe that there are really numerous ways that we can express our anger. For example, we can protest, we can write letters to the editors, we can donate and volunteer for a cause, we can create art, literature, poetry, music, and we can also create a community that cares for others. So when you confront a situation that angers us, I want to tell you that do not just turn it off, but think about what made you mad and what made you feel so unjust. And I believe that that can bring a different change in our world. Thank you.
Okay, so the point I was going to make is just that you used the phrase, I believe that it's anger, but I think there's a lot of feelings between anger and other things that motivate you. So for example, in all of the examples you talked about, is it anger that sustains us? Because when I get angry, I can't sustain it. Like, I'm angry about something for maybe a day, but then luckily I'm a chilled guy. So like my natural endorphins take over and I'm back to being chilled again. It's only really moral indignation or my understanding of ethics and morality that continuously pushes me to do something. So you've said, I believe it's anger, but I think anger is just a psychologically, anger is a temporary state. I think it's a sense, it's actually grit. It's grit in terms of your moral indignation. I don't think you can sustain anger. Like the candlelight protests, I think that was moral indignation and grit and determination and hope that motivated the people. I don't have any evidence for that, but I think that's a better argument than we're so angry, so we're going to light candles and be really patient and stand here and sing songs. You know what I mean?
I was trying to say that because we feel anger, we try to think why we felt anger. So I really think that can connect to what you said. Then we can realize that the motivations, the grit, and those power. I believe that those power might come from the actual emotion of anger. So as I said previously, I think it is important to say that anger has power when it is used wisely and when it is guided with reason. So,
but anger itself is not used wisely. Anger is what makes you hit somebody and go to jail.
That is violence, but however, the anger itself is an emotion.
But what makes you not violent is your ability to control your anger and turn it into something else, right?
Yeah. So, but I just wanted to say that I just wanted to break the stereotype that anger, the emotion itself, is really bad. So like people actually tend to think that the emotion itself is really bad, and we shouldn't have those emotions, and we should avoid those anger. But actually, with our urge and with our reason, if we use those emotions really wisely, we can maybe lead to some changes.
Well, in that case, what you're saying is that we should turn our anger into moral indignation, that we have the grit to resolve the situation, because anger is not sustainable. Like, if you get really angry about something, once you're calm, you probably don't do anything about it. Like, you've got to change that into resolve and goals, that you have hope that you're going to save the situation. So basically what I'm saying is that when you make a kind of argument that these things are guided by, there's a causal connection between A and B, you need evidence for the causal connection between A and B. You can't just make the assertion. Because what you've called anger, I would call moral indignation. And be careful with the expression "I believe," because it doesn't prove anything. If you said, as we can see, based on this psychological evidence and these interviewees from the candlelight protests, we can see that what motivated them to keep protesting was the fact that they were able to convert their anger into something more sustainable and da-da-da-da, right? You know what I mean?
But yeah, I just wanted to break the stereotype that anger itself is really bad. That we can't use anger. So
But
that
like,
was why I was-
personally, I try to avert my anger.
Yeah.
I try to not be angry in all situations. The only time I get really angry, and this is kind of what I expect you to say, is like my son put a cable into the power socket, and it actually went zzz, and like the cable started to burn, and I was really afraid that he might electrocute himself. And I shouted at him so badly, and I was like, "Never do that again!" And like he was crying. And the reason why I did that was because I wanted him to be so scared of electricity that he never messed with it again. In the future, he might have like problems when he tries to plug something into the socket. But I want to save his life, and that is the power of anger for me. Like, not like how I deal with racism, or I deal with racism by being really reasonable and pointing out that the behaviour has been racist and providing evidence that that's against the Human Rights Convention and it's against the law. And I don't use anger for that. I feel like you've diagnosed anger. You've kind of like you haven't defined anger, and you've kind of used the wrong definition of anger. Like, if you said moral indignation is what makes us do this, then it might have worked.
Yeah, but it's not a new topic. Like, it's so it's just. And I was just trying to say, because if we have to feel anger in order to be that motivated. So that was what I was trying to say.
But how long is anger sustainable?
So yeah, it is not that sustainable, but still it gives us the motivation. So
Does it?
Yeah, so I think that has a really good power, because if we don't feel motivated, if we don't have some experience that gives us those motivations, then we might never do something. So.
But is there any evidence that it's anger that's the motivator and not hope? Like, in a psychological study, subjects A were really angry about something, subjects B were really motivated by something. Which one solved the problem? Which group solved the problem? This is the kind of evidence we need to bring to bear to solve the question of whether it's anger that helps us to get things done, or whether it's like having goals and aspirations and hope.
Yeah, so like, in order to have that hope, I just try to say, in order to have that hope, in order to like have the hope that we can change the world, then I thought that at least the emotion of anger, we should feel those emotions in order to, at least maybe I can, if I do something, I can have hope in it. So yeah, that was what I was trying to say. Yeah.
But we just don't like. As a scientist, even as arts students, we need to kind of see things scientifically. And we just need to understand if there's any evidence of causality, that it is anger, or whether it's something else. Like, what was it that brought down Park Geun-hye? Did people sustain their angriness? In which case, why did they not fight the police? Why did they not... In Hong Kong right now, the protesters are angry. And the police are... Anger normally provokes anger, actually. If you look at all of the works of non-violent confrontation and Gandhi and stuff like that, they say that if you're angry, the police are going to beat you up and shoot you and kill you. Whereas if you're like really peaceful and zen, the police can't do anything about it, right? So, like, there's not an awful lot of evidence that anger is what gets things done. Actually, it's like controlling your emotions and being like Jesus. I'm not religious here, but like, turn the other cheek makes it harder for the authorities to dominate you, because then everybody's insulted and everybody goes against the authorities. Whereas when you fight the authorities, people say, oh, maybe they deserve to get beaten up because they were fighting the authorities, right? So we just need some evidence and causality, because assertion is not the same as argument and evidence, right? And that's the same goes for everybody. Everybody who's made a claim without producing evidence of it, like, that's what you need to do. You need to produce some... If you're saying A causes B, then we need some evidence and argument rather than assertion, right? In order to score well on criticality.
So, like,
for the rest of your life, please. It doesn't matter if you don't get it now, but to get that understanding will make you so much better academically if you study abroad, or if you have to write an essay, or if you have to do a presentation, or anything like that, right?
So it doesn't mean it's the superiority of logos over pathos, or something like that.
You can never have a logical gap if you want to convince anybody. You have to have logos, ethos, and pathos in the right amount. If logos is missing, if there's any logic, truth tables of logic say that if there's any logical error in your argument is fundamentally wrong. It cannot be right. Even if your answer is right, like 2 + 2 = 4, but if you made a mistake in the equation, even if your answer is right, your argument is wrong, right? It has to be so. If anybody studied philosophy or maths, you'll back me up. So I don't expect you to get all this now. It's just feedback for the future, right? Like it's something undergraduates need to get.
So,
Okay.
are we going to the outcomes?
Yes, let's.